Hey guys, this is Shelby with the Rogers Public Library. So this week for Makerspace at your place, I'm going to show you guys how to make your very own Spirograph. Or you can think of it as a spiral art stencil, right? Spirograph is kind of a brand name, but basically we have a cardboard gear and then a track for the gear to go on. And when you spin it around, you draw a spiral pattern. And because our gears aren't 100% perfect, it's a little wobbly, but we do get a very nice spiral pattern. So if you want to think about what's happening here, so you have two circles, right? You have this circle moving around the inside, and then on here you can think of when the circle spins, you have a moving point, right? So you're tracing almost a second circle. I don't know what I can do with that one, right? Right, so more or less a circle or an oval, right? So the cool thing about these are called epicycles, and the shapes that they draw are epicycloids, right? But the cool thing about them is that you can actually draw any shape that you want using epicycles, right? So these are some shapes that I drew using an online Spirograph tool called Spirograph. We can link you guys to, right? So you can draw squares or triangles or even ovals like this, ellipses, and even if you had this one but with the point on the rim of the circle instead of on the inside, it would draw a straight line, right? So that's kind of crazy to think about. So when we're talking about it, we're talking about epicycles and the different shapes that you can draw to it. Another way to look at it is that if you can draw any shape with a combination of circle, or if you can make these different shapes with a combination of circles, right? Is you can also represent them with a combination of circles. So any shape, not just these even really, really complicated ones, can be represented by circles moving around inside of each other. If you have enough circles, right? We just have 2, so we're limited to the number of shapes we can make. But if you have 5 or 6 or 100 or 200, there's not really a limit to what you can draw. And there's a name for this. It's called a Fourier transform, and this is kind of a math tool that is really useful for a lot of different situations, because it doesn't just apply to circles. It also the way that we describe the motion of circles is the same way that we describe the motion of waves. And waves are really, really important in a lot of different areas, right? So you think about sound, you think about light, or you think about ocean waves. These are all types of waves, right? And you can describe them by using smaller waves or smaller circles. In a really cool way. And this idea of the Fourier transform, it's not only the basis for spirographs, it's also the basis for the technology we use to compress digital files that makes it possible to store like hundreds and hundreds of songs or hundreds and hundreds of images on your computer or on your phone or your parents' phones. So let's talk about constructing this. I'm going to say there's a really easy version of this you can do that you don't even have to. You can just get a circle and poke some holes in it and get a roll of tape or something, and you can draw circles like this, right? So ta-da, right? 0 effort, but that only works for some circles. And if I try to do the same thing with a different point on the circle, it just draws a straight line. So it's not exciting. So what you really need is gears to keep the circle from spinning too much, right? It needs to spin at a measured rate that you can get with gears. So my first attempt with this was these. I used some online stuff that I found to print off gears like this, and they're just too big and they don't really work. But the good thing about cardboard is that it has ridges on the inside, right? Called corrugation. I'm going to see if I can pull this off. And I found that it works better if you get the cardboard a little damp first. You can just separate the two sides. And at this point, I messed up a little. Okay, so there's still a little bit of the stuff on top of there, but you can separate the stuff with a pencil like this and get nice ridges, right? So if you do it right, you can get a really nice piece like this, or this one. Yeah, I found it. Okay, or like this, right? That you can turn into gears and into tracks. Okay, so that's the easy part. The harder part is making circles, right? You want these to be pretty exact. So you can use something like this and trace on the inside and get a really nice circle. And then you have to cut it out, and that can be hard. So we have like a die cut machine, and I use those to cut really nice circles. And we'll have some of these circles that you can pick up, and a whole kit that you can pick up to assemble these at home if you want. But we got our circles, right? And then the next step is technically optional, but I found that it helps a lot, is the cardboard is relatively thin. So if you stack it on top of each other, you have an easier time gluing it. And in order to make our circles as strong as possible, so like I said, they have ridges. And if you put the ridges at right angles to each other, that it makes the cardboard stronger. And I'm using hot glue here because it dries really fast. And that's very, very useful for our purposes. Okay. So we got our circles glued together, and we don't really even need to wait for it to dry too long. And then we have our ridge, and we just, there's one other step. Once we get it here, we're going to want to poke holes in it. And it's easier to do this before you put the corrugation on around the outside. But there we go. So we got our holes. And then we're just going to take this and wrap it around. And we found out about where we need to cut it. Let's see. All right, there we go. So now it's the same diameter. A word of advice, when you get it at this stage, you don't want to cut it like this, because it's going to mess up the ridges and it's not going to work as well. You only want to cut it between the ridges, like this. But so we're going to put the glue on this. And this is really hot glue, just a warning. But, you know, like I said, it just dries so fast that it makes the whole thing a lot easier. You don't have to, otherwise if we're using tacky glue or Elmer's glue or something like that, we'd have to hold this in place for a very long time. But as it is, it's almost completely dry, just in a couple seconds. Okay, yeah, and then there we go. We have our circle just like this one. The holes are a little bit bigger. Right. And let's see. I'll try this one. I think it's dried enough. It does help to go a little bit slow. Oh, that's nice. So we actually drew an ellipse. And that only happens when the diameter of the smaller circle is half the diameter of the larger circle. And there's a special name for this. It's a 2C couple. So I didn't mean for that to happen, but it did. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, but that's our Makerspace at your place for this week. I hope you guys had fun. See ya.